This is the story of a woman who was thrown away like she meant nothing, left at a roadside station as a baby, because her own parents decided she was not worth keeping. And 25 years later, she came back. Not to cry, not to beg for answers, not to ask why. She came back in a faded dress with a mop in her hand, and a plan in her head that nobody in that house could have seen coming. Because the same people who abandoned her had fallen so far down in life that they needed a maid, and the woman they hired to scrub their floors, wash their dishes, and eat her food alone in the kitchen after they had finished, that woman was the daughter they threw away. She watched them, she listened, she learned exactly who they still were. And then she made her move. Now I am not going to tell you how this ends. Not yet. Because before you understand what she did, you need to understand who she became. You need to understand how a baby left at a station with nothing turned into the kind of woman who could walk back into that house and make it tremble. You need to understand the orphanage, the hunger, the woman who became her real mother, the love story that almost didn't happen, the business she built from zero, the empire she created piece by piece while the people who gave birth to her were slowly losing everything. And then the disguise, the weeks inside that house, what she found in the attic, the day everything was revealed. This story has every single thing in it. Stay right here. This one is going to stay with you. Like this video right now if you believe that what goes around always comes around. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub, hit that bell. Every single week we have a story like this one. Comment below if you were Zara, what would you have done? Tell us everything. It was a Tuesday morning in November when they left her. The station was a small one, not a big city bus terminal, but the kind of roadside stop that exists between towns, where people wait under a zinc roof with their bags and their tired faces for the next bus to anywhere. In a small West African city, November meant Harmattan, the dry wind that came down from the Sahara, carrying dust that settled on everything and made the air smell of distance. The kind of weather that made everything feel further away than it was. Mr. Ade Cole was 31 years old. His wife, Beatrice Cole, was 28. They had been married for 4 years and had one child, a boy named Victor, 18 months old, who was sleeping in Beatrice's arms wrapped in a blue cloth. The baby girl was in a basket. She was 3 weeks old. She had not been named. Her parents had not named her because they had not wanted her. They had been hopping for a second boy. When the girl arrived, Mr. Cole had not even stayed in the hospital past the first hour. He had gone home, drunk palm wine with his brother, and told himself the situation would be handled. The handling was this. They drove to the roadside station on a Tuesday morning, left the basket near the zinc roof where someone would find it quickly, and drove away. Beatrice looked back once through the car window. The basket was visible in the dust. The baby was not crying. She was sleeping. Beatrice turned forward and did not look back again. She did not cry either. She told herself that this was a practical decision, that they could not afford 2 children, that a girl was not useful the same way a boy was, that someone would find the baby and take her to a proper place and the whole thing would be finished. She told herself these things for 25 years, but they never quite settled. The way a stone you throw into deep water never quite becomes silent. The basket was found 45 minutes later by a woman named Mrs. Adenola Fashola. She was 53 years old. She ran the Fashola Children's Home, an orphanage in the same city, 15 kilometers from the roadside station. She had been running it for 22 years. She had seen many things come through those doors, children left by parents who were sick, parents who were poor, parents who had died, parents who were young and scared and alone. She had seen all of these situations with the clear eyes of someone who had stopped judging the circumstances and focused entirely on what could be done about them. She had been passing the station on her way back from a supply run when she saw the basket. She stopped the car. She walked to it. She looked inside. The baby looked back at her. Mrs. Fasciola was not a sentimental woman. She had been doing this work too long to be sentimental. But something about this specific baby, the way she was looking up, completely calm, not crying, eyes wide and clear, and already seeming to assess what was in front of her, did something to the usual professional distance. She picked up the basket. She put it in the car. She drove to the children's home. That evening, after the baby had been checked by the doctor who came weekly, after she had been fed and settled into the infant room with the other very young children, Mrs. Fasciola sat at her desk and looked at the blank space on the registration form where the child's name should go. She thought for a long time. Then she wrote Zara. She did not know why. It was not a name from her language or culture particularly. It had arrived in her mind and felt right, and she wrote it down, and that was the end of the decision. Zara Fasciola. The orphanage gave children the director's surname as a formality. It was the first name that was the gift. Mrs. Fasciola was not Zara's mother. She made this clear, not cruelly, not coldly, but clearly, in the honest way that she believed children deserved. She told every child in her care where they had come from, as much as she knew. She told them about the basket, about the station, about what she had found. She told Zara this story when Zara was 5 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with a biscuit, listening with the complete focused attention that was already her defining quality. "Someone left me," Zara said. "Yes," Mrs. Fasciola said, "someone left you." "Why?" "I don't know," Mrs. Fasciola said. "I don't know their reason. What I know is that leaving you was the biggest mistake they ever made." Zara thought about this. "Why?" she said again. Mrs. Fasciola looked at this 5-year-old girl with the direct eyes and the biscuit in her hand. "Because," she said, "you are going to be something extraordinary, and they are not going to see it." Zara finished her biscuit. "Okay," she said, and went back to playing. She grew up in the children's home. It was not a comfortable life. The home was underfunded, as such places always were, and the children shared rooms and shared clothes and sometimes shared meals that were not quite enough for everyone. But Mrs. Fasciola ran it with discipline and love in equal measure, and the children who came through it were fed, schooled, cared for, and told regularly and directly that their circumstances were not their identity. Zara was the child who took this most seriously. She was not the easiest child in the home. She was not the most obedient or the most agreeable. She had a quality that the staff called stubbornness, and that Mrs. Fasciola privately called something else, determination. She had opinions and she kept them. She had questions and she asked them. She had a way of looking at problems that was different from the children around her. Not from above, not from outside, but from the very center of the problem, as if she were standing inside it and looking at all the walls simultaneously. She was 10 when she had her first business idea. The children's home had a small garden. It grew vegetables that supplemented the kitchen. One of the older boys, a 16-year-old named Emmanuel, grew vegetables well and had been thinking about selling some of the excess at the local market. He mentioned this casually one evening and then forgot about it. Zara did not forget about it. The next day she sat down with a manual and a piece of paper and worked out the numbers. What they grew, how much was surplus, what the market price was, what they would net after transport. She had asked the cook about prices on her last trip to market. She had looked at the calendar to understand what months produced most surplus. Emmanuel looked at the paper. "You're 10, he said. "Yes," she said, "so." He laughed. He presented the paper to Mrs. Fasciola. Mrs. Fasciola looked at it for a long time. Then she approved it. The garden surplus selling arrangement ran for 3 years. Zara managed the accounting. The home made extra money that went towards school supplies. Mrs. Fasciola showed Zara exactly how the money was tracked and used. Secondary school was where things accelerated. She had been given a scholarship to a proper secondary school through a donor program connected to the children's home. The school was competitive and demanding and full of children whose parents had money and connections and confidence that came with those things. Zara had none of these things. She had something else, the specific hunger of someone who understands that this chance is not coming again and treats it accordingly. She studied with the intensity of a person who is not just learning for herself. She was learning for every child still in the home. She was learning because Mrs. Fasciola had driven her to that school on the first day and said, "This is yours if you take it. Nobody can give it to you and nobody can take it away. Your brain is yours." She took it. She graduated top of her class. She sat for university entrance and passed. She got in. She was 18 years old, leaving the children's home for the first time. The night before she left, Mrs. Fasciola sat with her in the kitchen, the same kitchen where the biscuit conversation had happened 13 years before. "Are you afraid?" Mrs. Fasciola said. "A little," Zara said. This was honest. Zara was always honest with Mrs. Fasciola. "Good," Mrs. Fasciola said. "Fear means it matters. If you were not afraid, I would be worried." She pressed something into Zara's hand, an envelope. "What is this?" Zara said. "Some money I saved," Mrs. Fasciola said, "for exactly this. Don't spend it foolishly." Zara looked at the envelope for a long moment. She looked at Mrs. Fasciola. "You are my mother," she said, directly, the way Zara said everything. Mrs. Fasciola pressed her lips together. "Go to university," she said, "and call me every week." She called every week. "The story is just getting started. Stay right here." The university was in Lagos. Zara had chosen it specifically, not for the prestige, though it had prestige, but because Lagos was where business happened in Nigeria, where deals were made, where ideas could find the capital and the market and the scale to become real. She was studying computer science, a choice she had made at 15 when the secondary school had gotten its first computer lab, and she had spent every free period in it, understanding something about what technology was going to mean for the next 20 years. She understood it because she thought the way technology thought in systems, in inputs and outputs, in cause and effect. She had always seen the world this way, even as a child in the orphanage garden, understanding that the surplus in 1 month was connected to the planting in the month before. University was not easy. Money was tight. The scholarship covered fees but not much else. She lived in a hostel, ate the cheapest food available, and worked 2 part-time jobs, tutoring younger students in mathematics and working weekends at a small data entry company in Surulere. She sent money to the children's home when she had any extra. She did not complain. She had grown up without complaining as a habit. Mrs. Fasciola had not run the kind of place where complaining was rewarded. You looked at what you had. You used it as well as you could. You moved forward. It was in her second year that she met Daniel. His name was Daniel Obi. He was a year ahead of her, studying electrical engineering. He was from Enugu originally, a family that was solidly middle class, not wealthy, parents who were teachers, the kind of background that produced people who worked hard because that was what you did and expected the work to eventually deliver a return. He was in the computer lab on a Saturday afternoon when Zara came in for her regular session. She sat across from him without greeting him. She was focused on her own work. He noticed her after 20 minutes because she had been completely still and silent for 20 minutes, which was unusual. "What are you working on?" he said. She told him without looking up. A code problem she was trying to solve, a data processing algorithm for a class project. He looked at her screen. "Your loop structure is inefficient," he said. She looked at him. "Show me," she said. He showed her. She looked at his correction. She turned back to the screen. She implemented it, tested it, checked the output. "Faster," she said. "Yes," he said. "Thank you," she said, and went back to her work. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My name is Daniel." "Zara," she said. "Are you always this warm and welcoming?" he said. She looked at him. There was the beginning of something in her expression, not quite a smile, but the direction one would travel. "I am when there's time for it," she said. They were friends for 6 months before anything else happened. This was how Zara did things. She did not rush what mattered. She observed. She assessed. She understood that Daniel was someone worth knowing. She let the understanding develop at the pace it deserved. What she was looking for, not consciously, but in the way you look for things that have been missing long enough to leave a shape, was someone who saw her fully. Not the orphan, not the scholarship student, not the girl with the difficult background. Zara as she actually was. Daniel was slow to understand the orphanage. Not because he was unkind. He was genuinely kind, in the uncomplicated way of someone who was raised in a family that was loving and told him so, and expected the same from him. But the specific experience of growing up without parents, without the continuity of family history, without the particular weight and warmth of a house where you belonged, he could understand this intellectually. He had to learn to understand it in the way that mattered. He learned it one evening when Zara told him about the station. They were studying together in the hostel common room. It was late. The building was mostly quiet. Zara had been distracted all evening and Daniel had noticed and eventually said, "What is it?" She told him, the basket, the station, the harmattan dust, the story exactly as Mrs. Fasciola had told it to her, which was the only version she had. He listened completely. He did not speak while she was talking. He did not offer reassurances or expressions of sympathy that would have been about his own discomfort rather than her truth. When she was done, he was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to find them?" he said. "I don't know yet," she said. "Okay," he said, not pushing, not advising, just receiving what was actual. "That's the right answer," she said. "Is it?" "Yes," she said. "Most people tell me what they think I should want. You asked what I want." He looked at her. "What do you want?" he said. She was quiet for a long time. "To be something they cannot ignore," she said. "Whatever I do with finding them later, first I want to be something undeniable." He nodded. "Then let's make sure of that," he said. She looked at him. This was the moment, not a dramatic one, just a man saying let's instead of you should, that inclusive word, that specific assumption that they were going together wherever this was going. She was not the kind of woman who said her feelings easily. She was the kind of woman who showed them through what she chose. What she chose from that evening was to stop pretending she did not love Daniel Obi. He was not pretending either. They graduated in the same year. Her class was moved up due to an accelerated program she had completed. He in engineering. She in computer science with the highest GPA in her department, and a thesis on data optimization systems that 3 faculty members had quietly passed to industry contacts. Those contacts led to her first job. It was not a grand job. A mid-sized tech company in Lagos, not one of the big names, but a real company with real clients and real problems to solve. She was a junior data analyst. She was paid well enough to rent a small flat in Yaba with a flatmate and to send money to Mrs. Fasciola every month without strain. She stayed for 2 years. She learned everything the company knew in those 2 years. Every process, every client relationship structure, every inefficiency in the data management systems, every gap between what the company promised clients and what it could actually deliver. She learned this not to exploit it but to understand it, because understanding how a business worked at the structural level was the only way you could build one of your own that worked better. She left in her 26th year. She registered ZR Tech Solutions from a desk in the Yaba flat with Daniel beside her. He had been working at an engineering firm and had been saving money alongside her for 2 years. They had talked about this for a long time, the plan, the capital needed. the initial clients she had already identified, the specific gap in the Nigerian market she intended to fill. The gap was data management for mid-sized businesses, companies that were too large to manage their data manually, but too small to afford the enterprise-level solutions the big providers sold. They were in a middle space that nobody was serving well. Zara intended to serve them. The first client was a logistics company in Ikja. She had met the owner through a connection from the tech company. She pitched him with a presentation she had built over 3 weekends, specific, detailed, costed, with projections she had calculated conservatively so she would not be promising more than she could deliver. He said yes. The second client came from the first. The third came from the second. By the end of the first year, ZR Tech Solutions had 8 clients and a small team of 3, Zara, Daniel, who had joined full-time, and a developer she had met through the university alumni network. By the end of the third year, the team was 22 people, the client list was 60, and the company had been written about in 2 Lagos business publications. By the time she was 30, Zara Fashola was running a technology company that managed data infrastructure for over 200 client businesses across Nigeria and Ghana, employed 64 people, and had signed its first partnership agreement with a company in the United Kingdom. She married Daniel in her 28th year. Small wedding. She did not believe in excess spending on a single day that could be directed toward building something that lasted. He agreed immediately. They were married in a ceremony with 40 people. Mrs. Fashola sat in the front row in her best dress and cried for the first and only time Zara had ever seen her cry. Daniel became her operations director. He was not there because she needed him there. She could have run the operations herself. He was there because he understood the business completely, because his engineering mind was precise in ways that complemented her strategic thinking, and because working alongside each other in a building they were filling with their own efforts was, for both of them, a version of the life they had both wanted and not been certain they would get. He also understood, without it being said explicitly, that something was building in Zara that was not about the business. She had been finding things. Not immediately, not quickly, but over years of working in Lagos, of building a company and a name, of becoming in a small but real way the undeniable thing she had described in the hostile common room. She had been quietly, methodically, researching. She had hired a private investigator when she was 29. She had given him the only information she had: the station, the approximate date, the city. He had worked for 6 months. He found them. Don't go anywhere. What happens next is why this story exists. A quick thing, subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub if you haven't yet. The next part of this story is what we have been building toward the whole time. Their names were Ade and Beatrice Cole. They lived in a city 2 hours from Lagos. They had been, at the time they left the baby at the station, lower middle-class people with a modest house and a man with a minor civil service position, and a woman who sold fabric at market on weekends. They had climbed slightly in the years after. Ade had risen to a more senior position. They had built a bigger house in a better neighborhood. Victor had gone to private school. But then the years had turned. Ade had retired at 62 from the civil service, with a pension that was inconsistent in the specific way that Nigerian pensions were inconsistent. Sometimes paid, sometimes delayed, never reliable. The big house had required expensive maintenance that they had deferred for years. Deferred maintenance had become structural problems. Structural problems had become a house that was falling apart around them in ways that were expensive to fix and impossible to ignore. Victor, the son they had kept, the son for whom they had discarded their daughter, was 30 years old and living in Canada. He called infrequently. He sent money occasionally but not consistently. He had his own life and his own needs, and the distance between Lagos and Canada was not just geographic. The investigators' report included photographs. Zara looked at them for a long time alone, in her office, after Daniel had gone home for the evening. Adek Cole was 68. He was thinner than the photographs she had found of him in earlier years. His house, what the investigators' report called a mansion, though by the photographs it was a large house that had once been grand and was now a building with peeling paint and rusted gates and a garden that had been allowed to go wild. His house was mortgaged twice over with a debt that exceeded its current value. Beatrice Cole was 65. She had the face of a woman who had spent many years not quite looking at herself directly. Not guilty exactly. Guilt implies a confrontation with the thing you did. More like someone who had become very skilled at arranging her internal furniture so that a specific room was always kept closed. Zara put the photographs down. She called Daniel. "I found them," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel?" he said. "Like I want to understand something," she said, "before I decide anything." "What do you want to understand?" "Whether they changed," she said. "Not from what happened. I don't care about their feelings about what happened. Whether they are different people, whether 25 years did anything to them, whether the person who left a baby at a station still lives in that house, or whether something happened along the way that made them think about it differently." He was quiet. "How do you find that out?" he said. "I get close enough to see," she said. Another silence. "You're going to go there," he said. "Not as myself," she said. He understood then. She could hear him understanding it, the pause of a person integrating information and arriving at where it was going. "Is this safe?" he said. "I am going as a maid," she said. "They have a crumbling house and no money and they need domestic help. I know this from the investigators' report. The last maid left 3 weeks ago. They put a notice in the local newspaper." "Zara, I need to see who they are," she said. "In their own house. When they think no one who matters is watching, that is the only real answer." "You have built a $50 million company," he said. "I know," she said. "And you are going to scrub their floors," he said. "Yes," she said. He was quiet for a long time. "When?" he said. "Next week," she said. "I don't like this," he said. "I know," she said, "but you understand why." Another long pause. "I understand why," he said. "Every day you're in there you call me." "Every day," she said. "If anything happens." "Nothing will happen to me in that house," she said. "They can barely afford the lights. They are not dangerous, they are reduced." "Okay," he said. "Daniel," she said. "Yes." "I love you," she said. "I am going because I need the answer, not because I am going to lose myself in there. I know who I am." "I know you know," he said. "That's not what I'm worried about." "What are you worried about?" "That you'll find out they haven't changed," he said, "and that it will hurt you even though you think it won't." She was quiet. "It will not hurt me," she said. "It will clarify me." She prepared carefully. She bought 3 sets of simple clothes, the kind that communicated immediately a certain position in the world. Not dirty, not poorly maintained, she was not performing degradation. Just plain, functional. The clothes of a woman who was looking for domestic work because she needed the income. She told her team she was taking 2 weeks personal leave. She told her executive assistant to handle the daily operations and escalate to Daniel for anything significant. She briefed Daniel on every ongoing matter. She drove to the city 2 hours from Lagos on a Monday morning. She arrived at the address the investigator had given her. The gates were rusted. The garden was overgrown. The house was large and had once been good, but the paint was peeling from the walls in sheets, and one of the upstairs windows was cracked and covered with tape. 3 stone steps led to the front door. The stone was cracked. She knocked. Beatrice Cole answered. She was 65 years old, shorter than Zara had imagined from the photographs. Her hair was fully gray. She wore an expensive wrapper that was faded from many washes. She looked at Zara with the particular expression of someone who has been reduced by circumstances and is using a thin version of past dignity to manage the reduction. "You are here about the maid position," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Zara said. Beatrice looked at her. Her eyes moved over Zara with the assessment of someone who had hired domestic staff before and was applying whatever criteria she had developed. "Come in," she said. Zara stepped inside. The interior of the house told the story clearly. The furniture was good, original pieces from a more prosperous time, but nothing had been replaced or recovered in years. Dusty, slightly dark, the kind of house where the lights were kept off in rooms not in use not for environmental reasons, but because the electricity bill was something to manage. Adek Cole was in the sitting room. He was 68, a large man who had been larger and had gone slightly loose with age, sitting in a chair that had the impression of his specific shape in it from years of use. He looked up when Zara came in. He looked at her the way men who have spent their lives in low-level authority look at people they consider below them, not with hostility exactly, but with a specific casual dismissal. As if she were a piece of furniture he was evaluating for function. "This one looks strong enough," he said to Beatrice, as if Zara were not in the room. Beatrice negotiated the terms with a tightness that communicated the money situation without explicitly stating it. The pay was low. The duties were comprehensive. The hours were long. Zara agreed to everything without negotiating. She asked one question: "Is there a place to sleep on the premises? I don't have accommodation arranged locally." There was the laundry room. Zara looked at it. A windowless room with a thin mattress on the floor and a hook on the wall for her clothes and a single bulb that worked intermittently. "This is fine," she said. And the job began. The first week was the hardest, not because of the work. Zara was not afraid of work, had never been. Hard work was a companion she had known her whole life and did not resent. The hardest part was the specific quality of their cruelty. It was not violent cruelty. It was not shouted or dramatic. It was the low, consistent cruelty of people who had decided, without examining the decision, that Zara was worth less than them. And they expressed this not in individual moments but as a constant texture, the way they spoke to her, or through her, or past her. The way Mr. Cole dropped things on the floor and expected her to retrieve them without comment. The way Mrs. Cole would redo work Zara had done, not because it was wrong, but to demonstrate that she could, that her standard was higher, that Zara's effort was insufficient by definition. On the third day, Adek Cole threw his muddy shoes at her feet in the sitting room. Not at her feet, a deliberate act. He had come in from the garden, looked at her, and dropped the shoes in front of her on the good sitting room rug. "Clean those," he said, and walked to his chair. Zara looked at the shoes. She looked at him. He had already picked up a newspaper. She cleaned the shoes. She cleaned them slowly and completely and carefully. She cleaned them the way she did everything, thoroughly, with full attention. And while she cleaned them, she thought about a company with 64 employees and $65 million in revenue, and a conference room where she sat at the head of the table. She thought, "You do not know who is cleaning your shoes." She thought, "I know exactly who you are." On the fifth day, Mrs. Cole told her she was to eat in the kitchen, after they had finished, whatever was left. "People like you should know your place," Mrs. Cole said. Zara said, "Yes, ma'am, I understand." And she ate in the kitchen. She did not eat whatever was left. She had begun buying her own food with her own money, small, discreet purchases at the local market during her 1 hour of free time in the afternoon. She ate her own food, and she sat in the kitchen and she thought. She was learning them, the way she had learned every client before she pitched them, the way she had learned the tech company she worked for in its systems and structures. She was inside this house the same way, learning every room, every habit, every relationship. What she was learning was this: they had not changed. Not in the way that mattered. The circumstances had changed. They were now reduced, dependent, without the minor authority that Ades's civil service position had given him. But the character that lived under the circumstances was the same character that had driven 2 hours to a roadside station and left a 3-week-old baby in a basket. The evidence was not in any single moment. It was in everything. The way they spoke to her and about her as if she were not a person who had an interior life. The specific casual comfort with which they diminished, not from hatred, which would at least have been an emotion, but from the comfortable assumption that their place was above and hers was below, and this did not require justification. She had been hopping, she realized in her 2nd week, for something different. Not redemption, not apology, but the evidence of something. Of a person who had spent 25 years carrying a thing and had been changed by the weight of it. There was no evidence. The thing they had done sat in the house without seeming to sit anywhere. Nobody mentioned an abandoned daughter. Nobody mentioned a 3rd child who might have existed. They spoke about Victor in Canada, Victor who was doing well, Victor who occasionally sent money, Victor who called on his mother's birthday if he remembered. They were proud of Victor. They had nothing that corresponded to guilt. Zara ate her food in the kitchen, and she understood something clearly for the first time. She had come here to answer a question. The question was whether they had changed. The answer was no. And the specific quality of the no, the complete absence of even the shape of regret, was the final piece of information she needed. She found the trunk in the 4th week. She had been asked to clean the attic. It was a task nobody had done in years, and the attic showed it. Boxes and furniture covered in dust. The specific accumulation of a house that had been lived in for decades, and where things had been put away without the expectation of being seen again. She moved through it systematically, the way she moved through everything, organized, thorough. In the far corner, under a heavy cloth, was an old wooden trunk. She opened it. Inside, a set of old documents, some photographs, some children's clothes from what looked like the 1990s, Victor's clearly, the boy she had never met, the brother she had been separated from, small shoes, a baptism certificate in his name. And at the bottom, folded carefully in a way that was different from everything else, a small blanket, white with blue edging, and embroidered in the corner in uneven stitching as if done by someone inexperienced, a single letter, Z. She held it. She sat on the attic floor for a long time. The blanket had been small enough to fit a newborn. The embroidery was rough. Someone had started learning how to sew letters and had done this one imperfectly. But they had done it. Someone at some point had sewn a Z onto this blanket and then put it in a trunk and left it in an attic. She sat with this for a long time. She called Daniel from the attic. She knew she was supposed to wait until evening, but she needed his voice. "I found something," she said. "Are you okay?" he said, immediately. This was Daniel, always the direct question about the actual thing. "I found a blanket," she said, "with my initial on it." Silence. "They kept something," he said. "They kept something," she said. "What does that mean to you?" She looked at the blanket in her hands. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I needed to see it." She put the blanket back. She closed the trunk. She went downstairs and finished her work. That evening she called the lawyer. Not the investigator, the lawyer. The one handling the next part of the plan, which had been set in motion 6 months ago, before she even applied for the job. Because this was Zara, and Zara did not begin anything without knowing where it was going. "Where are we?" she said. "The mortgage holder accepted the offer this morning," the lawyer said. "ZR Holdings now has a controlling interest in the property debt. We can move to acquisition at any point." 3 weeks, Zara said, "on my signal." "Understood," the lawyer said. She hung up. She sat in the kitchen. She thought about the blanket. She thought about Mrs. Fasciola in the front row at her wedding. She thought about Daniel saying, "I don't like this, but you understand why." She thought about what she was going to say when she stood in the sitting room and told them who she was. She had been planning this moment for years. Not the words exactly. You cannot plan the exact words, only the intention. The intention was not revenge, not in the simple definition of that word. It was not about making them suffer. It was about completing a circle, about standing in the room and being seen not as a maid, not as a servant, but as the woman she had built herself into, who happened to be the person they had decided was worthless. 3 more weeks. She went asleep on the mattress in the laundry room. She slept perfectly. Stay right here. Everything we have been building toward happens next. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub. If this story is keeping you here, there is a whole channel of stories like this one. Hit that bell. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Adek Cole found it in the mailbox. He came into the sitting room where Beatrice was watching television and stood in the middle of the room reading it with a face that Zara, cleaning nearby, watched carefully. His face went from puzzlement to confusion to the specific pale of someone who has received genuinely bad news. "What is it?" Beatrice said. He handed her the letter. She read it. "What is ZR Holdings?" she said. "I don't know," he said. His voice was different. The comfortable authority was gone from it. What was left was smaller. The letter was from the mortgage holder. It informed them that the debt on the property had been purchased by a company called ZR Holdings, and that the new holder intended to exercise the default clause that had been triggered by 3 consecutive missed payments. The property would be assessed for auction within 30 days. Beatrice looked at him. "We have nowhere to go," she said. He said nothing. They called Victor in Canada. Zara heard the conversation from the corridor. She was not eavesdropping. She was in a part of the house where sound traveled. Victor's voice, tinny through the phone speaker, said he did not have the money for this. He had his own mortgage. He had children. He was sorry, but there was nothing he could do. The call lasted 8 minutes. Beatrice went to her room. Zara watched Adek Cole sit in his chair in the sitting room for a very long time, not reading, not moving, just sitting in the impression his body had made in the furniture over years of sitting exactly there. She went to the kitchen and she thought. There were still 2 weeks before the signal was supposed to go to the lawyer. She had planned to use those 2 weeks to understand more, but she had understood enough. She had understood it the day she found the blanket. She had understood it more clearly every day since. She made a call that evening. "Move it forward," she said. "How far?" the lawyer said. "Next Monday," she said. "That's 5 days." "I know," she said. "It's enough time." She called Daniel. "Monday," she said. She heard him exhale. "Are you ready?" "Yes," she said. "What do you need?" he said. "Can you be there?" "I will be there at 9 in the morning," he said. "I need the red suit," she said. "The one from the Abuja conference." "Yes." She could hear him smiling slightly. He understood the significance. She had worn that suit the day she had signed the contract that took ZR Tech Solutions into international operations. She had chosen red deliberately that day, not for vanity, but because red was the color of something that cannot be ignored. "I'll bring it," he said. Monday came. Zara woke before 5. She lay in the laundry room for a while. The thin mattress, the single hook on the wall. She looked at the ceiling and she thought about Mrs. Fasciola. She thought about the basket at the station. She thought about the blanket in the trunk upstairs with the imperfect Z in the corner. She got up. She did her morning duties as normal. She made the Coles breakfast. She served it. She said nothing. At 9 o'clock, a car pulled up at the gate. Daniel got out first, then 2 of Zara's executives. then 3 people in security uniforms, then the lawyer with a briefcase. Ade Cole heard the gate. He came to the window. His face went through the alarm of someone who has been expecting bad news and is watching it arrive. He came to the front door. "What is the meaning of this?" he said. "Who are you people? Get off my property." The lawyer stepped forward. "Mr. Ade Cole, I am representing ZR Holdings. We have documentation authorizing our presence on this property, if you'd like to review it." "I don't care about documentation," Ade said. His voice was loud with the specific volume of a man who understands that volume has always worked for him and is trying it again. "I will review the documentation," a voice said. Everyone turned. Zara was standing in the corridor behind Ade Cole. She was still in the plain clothes of her 6 weeks. Her face was completely calm. She held out her hand to the lawyer. He walked past Ade Cole, past Beatrice, who had appeared at the sitting room door, and gave the folder to Zara. She opened it, she read it. She already knew everything in it. She had written the instructions herself, but she read it for him, for them. "Mr. Cole," she said. "Mrs. Cole, I think we should all go inside." They went inside. They sat in the sitting room, all of them, Ade in his chair, Beatrice on the sofa. Daniel stood near the window. The lawyer sat with his briefcase. The executive stood. Zara stood in the center of the room. "I will be brief," she said. "ZR Holdings purchased your debt 4 months ago. We exercised the default clause this week. This property now belongs to ZR Holdings. You have been served documentation to this effect." "Who is ZR Holdings?" Beatrice said. Her voice was the voice of someone trying to be indignant but finding it difficult with this specific woman standing in front of her. "I am," Zara said. "I am ZR Holdings." They looked at her. "You are the maid," Ade said, with less certainty than he would have had 6 weeks ago. "No," Zara said. "I am the CEO of ZR Tech Solutions. I have been the CEO for 11 years. ZR Holdings is a property acquisition company I operate separately. I applied for the maid position 6 weeks ago because I needed to be in this house and see who you were." The room was very quiet. "Why did you need to see who we were?" Beatrice said. Her voice was getting smaller. Zara looked at her. "You don't recognize me," she said. "I didn't expect you to. I was 3 weeks old the last time you saw me." A very long silence. "25 years ago," Zara said, "you drove to a roadside station 2 hours from here. It was a Tuesday, November, Harmattan. You had 2 children, a boy you kept and a girl you decided was not worth keeping. You left the girl in a basket." Beatrice made a sound. "I am the girl," Zara said. The room held its breath. Ade Cole's face went through several things very quickly. Recognition, shock, the beginning of something that might have been shame, but that arrived too late and too thin to carry much weight. Beatrice put both hands over her mouth. "I was found by a woman named Mrs. Adenola Fashola," Zara continued. Her voice was steady. She had said this in her head many times and it came out clean. "She ran an orphanage. She named me. She raised me. She saved enough money to help me go to university. She is the person who sat in the front row at my wedding. She is my mother, not by birth, by choice, by years. By the 1,000 mornings she got up and made sure we had enough." Nobody moved. "I spent 6 weeks in this house," she said. "I cleaned your floors. I ate in your kitchen after you finished. I slept in the laundry room on a mattress. Mr. Cole dropped his muddy shoes in front of me and expected me to clean them. Mrs. Cole told me people like me should know their place." She looked at both of them. "People like me," she said, "your daughter." Beatrice was crying now, silently, the specific tears of someone who has finally been forced to look at a closed room. "I was not looking for your tears," Zara said, not unkindly, with the precision of someone who means something specific. "I was looking to understand whether you had changed, Whether 25 years of life had done anything to the people who left a 3-week-old baby at a station. She paused. "You have not changed," she said. Adecole said, in a voice that had lost everything it usually relied on. "Zara." "I found the blanket," she said. "In the attic, the white one with blue edging with a Z embroidered in the corner. Someone made that." Beatrice's hands were still over her mouth. "I don't know who made it or when," Zara said. "I don't know if it was before I was born or after. I will probably never know, but I know it was in the trunk, and I know you kept it." The room was completely still. "I am not here for reconciliation," Zara said. "I am not your dearest daughter, and I am never going to be. You are not going to call me that. You are not going to reach for my hands and cry and explain yourself and expect that to become the new story." She looked at both of them clearly. "You have 1 hour to gather your personal belongings. Clothing, documents, personal items. This property belongs to ZR Holdings as of this morning. The contents of the house will be cataloged this afternoon. You will each be given $3,000, not because you deserve it, but because I am not the kind of person who leaves people with absolutely nothing, regardless of whether they earned it." Adecole opened his mouth. "The 3,000 is the end of it," Zara said. "I have no legal obligation to provide that. I am providing it because of who I am, not because of who you are." She looked at them for a long moment. Then she said something she had not planned to say. Something that arrived when she was standing in front of them and seeing their age and their reduction and the specific way that life had already been doing its own accounting. "I want to tell you one more thing," she said. They looked at her. "The woman who found me," she said. "Mrs. Fasciola. She is 80 years old this year. She is still running the children's home. She is still waking early and making sure children have enough. She is doing this with less money than she needs and more heart than most people I have met in my life." She paused. "I am building a new wing on the children's home this year, fully funded. I am naming it after the woman who chose to pick up a basket when she didn't have to." Beatrice made a sound that was something between a breath and a word. "That is all," Zara said. She turned to Daniel. He looked at her with the expression she had first seen in a hostile common room when she told him about a station and a basket and a Harmattan morning. And he had said, "Okay, and what do you want?" And she had understood for the first time that someone was not trying to manage her story but simply receive it. "Ready," he said. "Ready," she said. She walked to the door of the house she now owned. She paused at the threshold. She looked back at the Coles, sitting in the sitting room of the house that was no longer theirs, in the chairs that were no longer theirs, with the furniture and the history and the specific weight of everything they had chosen all around them. She thought of the blanket, the imperfect Z in the corner. She thought someone made that. And then she thought, it was not enough. The making of it was not enough. The keeping of it was not enough. The keeping of something and the treating of its owner like a servant were not two halves of the same thing that canceled each other out. What you do is who you are. She walked through the door. Outside, the morning was bright. Daniel was beside her. The security team arranged itself. The lawyer had the documents. Across the city, 64 people were at their desks at ZR Tech Solutions. In the children's home, Mrs. Fasciola was probably in her kitchen, beginning her day the same way she had begun it every day for over 40 years. Zara breathed in the morning. "Let's go," she said. She walked out of that house as the same woman who walked in. That is the important part. She did not go into that house to become someone different. She did not go looking for the love that had not been given. She did not go hopping that seeing their faces would close something in her. She went with clear eyes and a clear purpose, and a plan that she executed with the precision and the patience that had built everything she had built. And she walked out the same, except now she had the answer. The answer was no, they had not changed. And what the answer gave her was not grief, not rage, not the dramatic catharsis of a story where the villain's confession unlocks the hero's tears. The answer gave her completion, the specific, quiet settling of a person who has lived their whole life with a question and who has finally, on their own terms and in their own time, answered it. That is the whole story. But here is what I want to say before we end. The woman who made Zara was not the woman who gave birth to her. The woman who made Zara was the 53-year-old woman who stopped her car at a roadside station, looked into a basket, and took it, who named a baby girl with a name she could not explain, who ran a home with not enough money and too much love for 40 years, who sat in the front row at a wedding in her best dress and cried the first and only time Zara had ever seen her cry. Mrs. Fasciola. Mrs. Fasciola did not have biological children. She had 60 years of other people's children, hundreds of them, through the doors of that home. She did not do it for recognition. She did it because she believed, simply, without complication, that a child who has been left deserves someone who stays. She stayed, and Zara became. And now there is a wing on the children's home with a name on it. And inside that building, children who are growing up the same way Zara grew up are being told what Mrs. Fasciola told a 5-year-old girl at a kitchen table with a biscuit, that leaving you was the biggest mistake they ever made, that you are going to be something extraordinary, that the people who threw you away will never see it coming. If you have been underestimated, truly underestimated, in the deep and specific way of someone who was told they were nothing, hear this. The people who do not believe in you are not information about your value. They are only information about their own limits. Zara built an empire. She built a family. She built a wing on an orphanage. She also walked into a sitting room in a faded dress and told 2 people, quietly and without drama, exactly who she was and what she had become. Not for them. For herself, for the basket, for the blanket with the imperfect Z. For Mrs. Fasciola at 80, still waking early. For every abandoned thing that became something extraordinary. This has been Tribal Tales Hub. If this story touched you, if any part of it stayed with you like this video, 1 second, 1 click, it tells us to keep telling stories like this one. Subscribe to Tribal Tales Hub. We are here every week with a story that will stay with you. Hit that bell. Don't miss a single one. Comment below. Tell us, what would you have done with the blanket? Would you have taken it or left it? Tell us. Share this video. Send it to someone who was told they were nothing. Someone who is building something while the people who doubted them are not watching. Tell them this story is for them. This is Tribal Tales Hub. We will see you in the next story.